Your IT buddy has strongly urged you to buy a desktop instead of a new laptop. I don't even know what to invest in anymore. Expect more questions. That's totally fair, and I agree. A desktop is infinitely better than a laptop ever will be. Laptops are great for things like if you need to like check your emails while you're on the go. And if you need like a really good laptop, you have to invest a fuck ton of money into it. Desktops are upgradable. So if instead of having to replace the entire system every so often, you just have to replace a part, just like one part or two, and then you're fully set. Same price desktop over laptop. Yeah, that's not super true right now. That's just because the market's kind of fucked for all electronics, thanks to tariffs and AI bullshit. But typically that is the case. That's what the case is supposed to be. But even now, with the market being fucked, it's still more value for the money. Why would AI affect desktop prices? Because so AI data centers run off of all of the exact same hardware that goes into your regular PC. And because of that, all of the manufacturers that make that hardware are dedicated to only giving to only selling to AI companies. So they raised the fuck out of their prices to make a profit off of these AI companies and purposefully stopped producing consumer goods. So things like RAM has skyrocketed in price. So it used to be that you could get like 32 gigs of RAM for about $250. That was about typical. Now it's about $500 to get the same amount of RAM. So shit like that gets affected by AI companies a lot because that seems to be all they wanted to invest in. Exactly. Yet another reason why I'm not a huge fan of AI. At least AI companies. Like, AI itself is a fine technology, and there's a lot of nuances there. But, like, this idea that everything should be on the cloud and streamed to your device instead of locally ran on your computer is bonkers to me. Because it's like, expecting everybody to have their entire digital life on the cloud is insane. Like, there are some companies that are trying to convince you to stream your operating system to your computer instead of having it locally on your computer. If you don't know what an operating system is, that's the thing that makes it so your computer isn't just a bunch of ones and zeros on your screen and you can actually have shit to interact with. So it's what stores all your files. It's what, yeah, all that shit. And there are some companies that want to make it so it streams to your computer instead of actually being locally ran on your machine. Which, if you're unaware, a good shorthand is if locally ran will always be better than streamed. It's like how playing a DVD locally feels like a huge invasion of privacy. Yeah, it really is. It's like how I describe it is playing a DVD on a DVD player is always going to have way better quality than watching the exact same movie on Netflix. Because it's going to be locally ran, which can give you better bit rates. It can give you better everything. Better quality, better resolution. The implications of that I don't even want to consider. Yeah, don't consider it because it's depressing. Should we be worried about companies forcing that switch of operating systems to the cloud? Yeah, we should be. It's not an immediate threat right now, but the fact that people are floating it as a possibility is the scary part. That's why I always encourage people to look for open source software as well, and use open source options of operating systems such as Linux instead of using Windows or Apple. Now, you lose a lot of functionality that way, which sucks a lot. But the upside is your computer does exactly what you want it to do. As long as you can get it to do it, it can do it. Sorry, trying to explain Linux while also doing a delve hurts my brain. But yeah, It's not a small chance. There's a huge profit incentive for companies to do that, because then they can force you to pay a subscription for your operating system. Basically, anything digital that can be a subscription, a company is trying to make it a subscription. Subscriptions are how they get all of their money now, which is disgusting. You would think that if a technology just wasn't profitable, they would just stop investing in it. But they seem to not know how to just take the L. All good information. I've decided to become more tech literate. A little sad how much I don't know. It's fine. Honestly, the tech industry makes it purposefully complicated because they like to feel special. Like, that's why the names for computers and shit like that, like computer parts, just don't make any sense. Just know computer programmers are the most annoying people you'll ever meet. But no, if you want to become more tech literate and you want to do it in a way that fights against the big tech overlords, do research into things like open source software, self-hosting. So open source software is stuff like the code is freely available for anybody to see. It's free to download, free to use. Maybe there will be a donation or something like that, but for the most part, it's completely free. And they're not backed by any large companies or anything like that. And it's a community-backed thing. So if you know how to code, or even if you just have suggestions, you can contribute to the open source software. You had a CS classmate in college who got viscerally annoyed when I asked him to explain things in layman's terms, inadvertently gatekeeping. Yeah, that's a very typical thing. Expect a lot of that if you keep looking into tech stuff. Not a great look for us, but it's fine. The open source AI community described is open source the name itself. So open source software is open source is a concept. It's an idea where you, instead of like posting, like if you code a program, instead of keeping that code hidden and just releasing the product and charging for the product, what you do is you release the code freely available to people to view however much they want, and they can contribute and change the code and alter it and basically make it a whole new product. So yeah, it's not really AI. There is open source AI. Like, you can run your own AI model on your personal computer. That's a thing. However, it requires a lot of power. You need very powerful computer parts. But yeah, I would recommend just looking at the Wikipedia page for open source software. It'll be able to describe it a lot better than I can, I feel like. Great cooperative initiative we all got to support. Yep, it's a huge community-backed thing. So there are even like open source operating systems such as Linux. Is it taking off? Not really, no. Because unfortunately, open source software is extremely finicky. That's the downfall of it not being backed by like a big company or something like that. The benefit that you get from that is stability. But what's great about open source software is if you know coding and you know how to make it stable, you can just force it to become stable by doing it yourself instead of waiting for the company to roll out an update. So you do need to be a little bit more tech literate to use open source software proficiently, especially in a way that would replace conventional software. So for example, if you were to switch to a Linux operating system instead of Windows or Apple, if you wanted to use Photoshop, you can't use Photoshop because it does not run on Linux software or on Linux operating systems. So instead, what you have to do is you either have to dual boot, you have to have two operating systems on your computer, meaning you have Linux for most of your stuff, but then you switch over to Windows when you need to use Photoshop. Or you find an open source alternative, and the open source alternative for Photoshop is a program called GIMP. And it cannot replace Photoshop at all. It is not proficient at replacing Photoshop entirely. But it can get you like 75% of the way there. So I always say that GIMP is good for designing YouTube thumbnails, and that's kind of it. You can't really use it for like true photo manipulation unless you're super dedicated to trying to get it to work. Let me fight this boss really quick, and we'll talk more about that. Got him. Hell yeah. Good signs that they are successfully making versions of popular programs, Photoshop, etc. Yeah. We just need them to actually become good enough to replace. Yeah. Eventually, probably they'll get there. They're just not quite there yet. That's what sucks. Have to start somewhere. That's very true. I'm probably going to try to force myself, probably in the coming weeks, to switch over. Like, I'm going to challenge myself to switch over to using only open source software for everything except for like my professional stuff, like my freelance photography and stuff like that. I'm obviously going to not risk that. And I'll still use Lightroom and Photoshop for that. But I'm thinking that I'll switch both of my computers over to Linux and try to get them at least mostly functioning to where I use them now. And see how much I can replace. Because I hate paying subscriptions. I don't know fully. Because the editing software I use technically runs on Linux, but you kind of have to force it to. Which sucks a little bit, but I can get it working, so really nothing like that would change. And it's the exact same editing software. So once you're inside of the program, operating system doesn't fucking matter. It all looks the same after that. Let me go turn this in. However, for streaming, my streaming software, my OBS is the software that I use to stream and record my gameplay and stuff. That is an open source software. OBS is open broadcasting software. It is an open source software. So that wouldn't change as well. It'd be the exact same program. The difference really would just be what plugins I use on my OBS, because some of them don't work in Linux. Like whenever you send a chat, the chat that appears above my face cam, I don't think I would be able to get that working. If I could, that'd be awesome. But if I could get that working, honestly, I could stream with Linux as well pretty easily. The only thing I'd be worried about is GPU drivers, because I need to make sure my GPU is fully operational. Maybe it already exists. Just check if someone who streams does open source work has created. Yeah, probably. Honestly, hold on. Let me check. Because the chat thing I use is called StreamerBot, which is also, I think, is open source. Download. Do you have a Linux version? StreamerBot on Linux installation. Okay. Okay, it exists, but it's experimental, and you have to do it using compatibility layers. That's fine. Sounds complicated. Yes, it is complicated. This is why I always say, like, you should try to learn more, like as much tech literacy as you can. However, there is a limit for everybody, and some people's limit is way shallower than others. Like, for instance, I'm willing to go through it because I already know the fundamentals. I can go straight to the complicated stuff, or like the semi-complicated stuff. That makes me sound better than I actually am. It can be really annoying, but if you have the time for it to look into it, I would be able to participate in these movements like open source for the sake of privacy and all things. So whatever it takes. Yeah, it's great. Like I said, for streaming, my My software is already open source, so and that's the typical software that every streamer uses. There are some people that use slightly different ones, but OBS is the typical one, and that's already open source software that's taken over as the primary software to use. There are other versions as well, other examples. Fuck, I can't think of any off the top of my head. GIMP is another kind of example. A lot of people who can't afford Photoshop usually start with GIMP. Or if they just don't need Photoshop and just need to like make YouTube thumbnails, they just use GIMP as well. So, oh damn, that's another thing that I just thought of. My audio software, all of my like streaming gadgets that I have on my desk are not open source. So I would have to hack them in some way to be able to use them viably, and that's going to be strung together with hopes and dreams.